boy, imagine sending your son off to college. You worry about normal things like grades or drinking or parties and whether he's making good decisions or not. And maybe he calls you up one day and tells you he's thinking about joining a fraternity, and you figure, it could be good for him. Friendships, connections, a sense of belonging. And then imagine finding out that prosecutors say pledges at that fraternity were sometimes expected to cut and package cocaine as part of being initiated. That is the stunning allegation coming out of Penn State, where 14 people have now been charged. This is Pennsylvania's Attorney General.
Well, what I can say is, based on the facts of the case as we have them so far, this really grew while they were at college. We had those two different fraternities where members of the fraternities were involved. We had information, and as you know, these are all allegations until proven guilty. But we have information that led us to believe that fraternities were using pledges to cut up and help package the powder cocaine, and that was part of their pledge.
Unbelievable. Let's bring in Roshini Rajkumar, crisis strategist, licensed attorney, and host of the Crisis Files podcast. Roshini, I would say this is a crisis.
This is a major crisis, and of all the schools in all the world that this happens to, Penn State did not need another huge hit like this. I mean, they're just kind of getting out of the whole paternal stuff, you know?
Right.
I mean, this is crazy.
It is so crazy. I mean, if you're a parent, what is your first reaction if you have kids at this school when you hear an AG come out and say, "Look, we have evidence that this is what was going on in these fraternities"?
Well, I'm sure parents are wondering what kind of safety net, what kind of actual security is the administration employing there? You know, I mean, something like this should not be happening. And I mean, as widespread as it sounds like this scheme was and the various layers, and you would think, Kevin, if pledges were indeed, you know, as is alleged, involved in this, how do more people not know that? You know, or it also involves, beyond the 14 people charged, there were a lot of people that probably knew something like this was happening and looked the other way, because that whole rush period for fraternities and sororities is just so out there and very public in its own strange private way. It's still public and things are heard about and talked about. So this just really makes me question what is happening with the administration over at Penn State, the police that they hired, the security, and maybe some of those people were the whistleblowers so that this finally came out, like the residence assistants, other people like that. But this is a very scary time. And I know you have a lot of parents and hopefully students, college students, high school students in Michigan listening. And at the end of the day, you never want to, if you even think someone's trying to bring you into a criminal enterprise, you have to turn the other way. And in that moment, it's not going to seem cool, but this kind of thing sticks with you for the rest of your life. And, you know, those 13 young people are going to have a very hard time finding a job in the future, especially if they're in jail, but even after any kind of jail time.
I know people out there are just saying, look, just say no. I don't want to be a part of a fraternity that wants me to package cocaine. But these are 18 and 19-year-old kids typically who are the pledges, and they're basically being told, or they believe, if they say no, that means they lose the fraternity. And I don't know, peer pressure becomes coercion at some point.
Well, peer pressure is very real, and those kinds of coercive tactics are very real. But I would hope, if you're smart enough to get into Penn State, I would hope that by 17 or 18 years old, you also know what a crime is and what a crime is not. And if someone is asking you to do something like that, that's anything that's hidden and not supposed to be public, that even if it's not outrightly a crime, that is not something you should be doing. And hopefully the entire freshman, sophomore classes at Penn State would know better, you know, and I don't want to point to the parents. These individuals should know better. And sadly, one of the parents is even charged in this situation. I mean, it is, and you know what? The state attorney general will make and try to make, to the extent that he can, an example of all of these defendants.
So if Penn State hired you as a crisis management person, and they should, what's the first thing the university leadership needs to do when a story like this breaks?
Well, they do have to be open and transparent. I did see some of their initial statements, which I did put the crisis lens on those statements, Kevin. And it is true. They came right out and said, this will not be tolerated. We are cooperating
Horrified.
with law enforcement. Yeah, they're horrified, exactly. And that they're cooperating with law enforcement. I mean, the thing you don't want to do is try to seem defensive and, oh, we're not sure that they have this right. No, we're cooperating with law enforcement. We're going to make sure all the investigations happen all the way to the end until we figure out what's happening here. And then the next step, if I were coaching them, would be to be very clear, and maybe they're doing this, I don't know, but they should be communicating directly with their own audiences, parents, other students, the rest of the fraternity sorority system. There should be maybe a town hall on campus. The actual adults in the room, the actual people who run that place should be holding meetings as well as putting out communications that make it very clear this will not be tolerated, and anything else that's learned or found out at others fraternities and sororities there, they will investigate. I mean, they have to really put out the appearance of not only they're cooperating with law enforcement, but they're digging into their own campus and all of the different actors on campus to make sure there isn't more of this or any other criminal enterprises running rampant.
Well, now that you solved their crisis, let's put on your lawyer hat. And if a pledge says, I didn't want to package drugs, I was pressured or forced into doing it, how does that stand up legally?
Well, it doesn't. Yeah, there might be some other allegations, other charges you can tack on to the perpetrators who made the person do that. But if something is a statutory crime, which drug charges are in these different states, in Pennsylvania, in New York, I mean, that's another thing. This crossed several state lines, so they've got a lot of bad coming their way. Just kind of like a speeding ticket, Kevin. If you're going 65 and a 60, now it's kind of a lame officer that might pull you over for that, but technically you've broken the law and he or she could give you a ticket. Same thing with drug charges. Doesn't really matter that they forced you. Like, that is a statutory crime and you broke the law. So the coercion piece, I mean, it's good to bring it up if you were indeed coerced, but that's not going to take away from your criminal culpability.
All right, so if your child is telling you that they want to pledge a fraternity or they're pledging a fraternity, what questions should parents be asking that perhaps they haven't traditionally asked?
Well, they should probably have their kids and maybe together look up who's running the fraternity, who are the officers of the fraternity, how squeaky clean or not are the seniors and juniors that are running you through the pledges. Look up the history of those places on campus, the fraternity or sorority houses on campus. And, there are some that have squeaky clean reputations. There are some that do not. My understanding is one of the fraternities was not a university sanctioned fraternity. So I wonder why, those are the kinds of things. So that's definitely now this situation. It always takes bad situations and crisis situations to both fix things, but then also cast doubt and so many other areas. So you better believe beyond Penn State, parents are going to be asking questions. Lots of fraternities and sororities are going to be hurt. And the other chapters of these two fraternities across the country, wherever else they have chapters, will also be under scrutiny. And I would guess the thrifty reporters in those different markets will be looking into those fraternities in those states.
Well, Penn State did not do a great job with transparency during the fraternal years. Hopefully they'll do a much better job with this crisis. Roshini Rajkumar, crisis strategist, licensed attorney, and host of the Crisis Files podcast. Thanks so much for the conversation. Wonderful.
Thanks, Kevin.